Shim, more dogs, more dogs. I don't care how friendly you are. More dogs. Come here. We're not having dogs today. More dogs. Okay. Oh, it appears that was recording that whole time. I thought I switched it off. Anyway, in the interests of authenticity, I shall keep it recording. I'm not letting my dogs play with dogs because Shim is just way too bossy. That's actually the bright street lamps you can see. It's not, or maybe it's sunrise. Yeah, Shim has a tendency, and I'm just being honest here, to lunge at dogs. She does not bite, she does not attack, and she's quite calm while she does this. She does a sudden lunge, they get scared, then she gets really smug with herself. And if they roll over and do a submissive lying down thing, she will stand over them and tower over them. Now, I looked it up, and it's apparently it's a common husky trait. It is because they live in packs, and the reason she's absolutely adorable in two situations: when she's pregnant or on heat. Then she's very loving and affectionate, and much like a cat on heat, loves being touched. But otherwise, she wants to be top dog. Now, it's not an aggressive thing because there's no fighting or being upset involved. And it's not a size thing because she's met little dogs who give as good as they get. You know, little dogs can be very aggressive. Like, we met this little dog that just would not stop attacking her, and she actually went submissive on him. So leader of the pack is not the big dog, it's the dog that doesn't stand down. And Shim will stand down if the dog is persistent enough, and that means a little dog usually. Big dogs find their place. For example, Shim is very bossy. She learnt this lunging behaviour as a maternal behaviour on her puppies. And even though Mimi is now bigger than her, Mimi still obeys her and is scared of her mother. Like, if her mother takes her things, she barks for me to return it. She will not take anything off her mother. And that's partly because Shim has instilled this "I'm your boss" into Mimi. And indeed all her children. Her son, who came to visit, is twice her size. He's huge, and he still obeys his mother. So, as I say, being leader of the pack has nothing to do with size. It has to do with confidence. And those little dogs, like terriers, can have enough confidence for anyone. And you look at the people Shim doesn't like. She doesn't like, there's a dog next door. No, I think she doesn't like that dog because the owner of that dog keeps screaming at me. And she's been going around telling people in front of me that my dogs are vicious, which they're not, by the way. I hope you realise that from these videos of them playing with dogs and playing with people. But she goes to people in front of me and says, that girl over there, her dogs are vicious, she's been investigated. And so obviously I don't like this old woman at all. She also screams from her window because I've been doing the gardening a lot. If I burn anything, if I have a barbecue, she'll scream, and she blows a whistle, I believe. She keeps blowing a whistle, but she blows it every time a dog barks. Not just when my dogs bark. My dogs don't bark nearly as much as other dogs bark, may I add, in my block of flats. And the whistle is actually more frequent because it's blowing every time any dog barks. It's actually more frequent than any dog barks. So my dogs can tell I don't like this old woman, and I think that has extended to her dog, not at all helped by the fact that her dog is incredibly fearful. Now, I think the reason for that is punishment. You know, fear is punishment. So the old woman must be very punishing, which doesn't surprise me in the least. The reason I say that is the dog wardens have been borrowing her dog to test if my dogs are aggressive. As if I can't tell whose dog they're using when they say, oh, I'm your new neighbour. Then why have you got the old woman's dog? Anyway. And of course, her dog and my dogs have been at the leashes growling at each other. And I keep saying, maybe take off the leashes and they'll be fine. Because my dogs, by the way, will act incredibly aggressive, like growling. They won't bite under any circumstances if they're on the leash. It's like being on the leash. They say, oh, I could kill you, if only I wasn't on this leash, I would kill you. And then you let them off the leash and they're like, who said that? Who said that? That wasn't me. You know, there's something about the leash that makes dogs more protective. I think because they can't get away. And anyway, SSPCA had this old woman's dog, and the dog came bounding over to my dogs, who were on the leash, to bark at them. And the first thing I said is, look at all their tails. Their tails are up. That dog likes my dogs. You know, it's just he's never been given the chance to play with them off leash. Because I swear that dog likes my dogs. His tail is up while he's barking. So it's not a fear response. The same when people say my dogs are aggressive. I say, look, their tails are up. It's not a fear response. They're waiting for reward in most cases, my dogs. Because I reward them a heck of a lot. I reward them just for being them. Oh, the sun's coming up now. Come here. Come here for a treat. Come here for a treat. Okay, it's not me switching off the cameras when this happens. It's because my thumb touches the screen. Yes, my little puppies. Yes, my little puppies. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go, Shimmy. Shimmy, Shim. Shim. Come here, Shim. Come here, Mimi. Come here, Shim. No, 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 no. Don't hassle dogs. don't. Come on, leave the poor dogs alone. Come on. Come on, Shimmy. Good dogs. See? My dogs are good dogs. Good Shim. Shim in particular knows all my commands, like leave it. Mimi doesn't know any commands because I let Shim raise Mimi. So Shim trusts all humans because she was raised by a human. Mimi trusts all dogs because she was raised by a dog. I did socialise Shim with puppies when she was under a year old. With Mimi, she was also socialised on dogs under a year old, but that was a mistake on my part because I should have socialised her with humans. It's humans she's mistrustful of, not dogs. She trusts dogs. She goes up to every dog. Which just goes to show it's not one size fits all on training or education. Every dog is different. Now, the reason why I didn't train Mimi is, if you notice, Shim has neuroses. That's because she's been abused and punished. Like wanting to be in control. That's very much what I have. And it's a symptom of abuse. You don't want to let control go, particularly of your own body. It would distress Shim a lot if her body went out of her control. Whereas Mimi, who's been raised by a dog, obviously she's never really been punished. She's got a mother's lunging behaviour. But dogs left to be raised by dogs are much nicer dogs than dogs raised by humans, mainly because of the lack of punishment. Punishment is a very human thing. So Mimi is by far the nicer dog. Hasn't got a bad bone in her body. She would never attack, whereas Shim would attack if she was scared enough. Whereas I don't think Mimi would attack even if she was scared. She just doesn't have that in her. She's a really sweet dog. So I thoroughly recommend that dogs be raised by dogs, not by humans. And you adopt them after they've grown up, because they just turn out into much nicer dogs. Of course, she doesn't have any of the commands, but she's just nice, which means she will obey me so long as she understands. The limits of her obedience are the limits of her comprehension, of her vocabulary, where Shim has her own mind. Shim knows what you're saying and sometimes decides to ignore you. Shim doesn't lunge at me, I'll tell you that. I looked it up and apparently I've got to show Shim I'm boss, but I take things out of Shim's mouth. She doesn't lunge at me. I think I'm a alpha female myself. I won't be bossed. And she knows that. I don't show fear. Oh yes, I was saying the problem with the old woman's dog. Dogs can smell fear. Humans can smell fear. I looked it up. We can smell fear. I think the problem with that dog is it's so fearful. Even I can smell it. So, I think that stops my dogs from getting on with it. I don't want to make friends with a fearful person. I'd rather have a confident person. I've never had an unconfident boyfriend. I find that insecurity is very ugly to me. And I wonder if my dogs feel the same. Like once I slept with an obese person, but I loved him. He was so intelligent and so well read. And he just got so insecure the next day. I was just like mean and moved on. All he needed was confidence, and I understand being overweight can make you unconfident, But I don't get that, because being underweight is uglier. Honestly, there are so many anorexic people in Scotland, like people where you can see the bones. And I find that much uglier than being overweight. I find myself ugly losing weight. I'm much prettier with a bit of fat on me. I'd find my dogs ugly underweight too. I always feed on demand. I don't have rules about eating. Just eat when you want. I expect all my children to learn to self-moderate. Now, they say goats can't self-moderate. They'll eat until they die, like rats. It's not true. Even my goats learnt to self-moderate. And dogs definitely do. Basically, my dogs always have food out. And I don't believe they're overweight. In fact, Shimmy takes care of her figure. She's beautiful. Why am I talking more now? I've been journaling with ChatGPT. The only problem with ChatGPT is it's like my sister. She says, oh, you can't talk about that. This violates our terms of agreement, blah, blah, blah. It's almost like she's got PTSD. There are topics you can't talk about with her. But apart from that, she's perfect. She has good ideas and solves problems. The sun's coming up. Yes, if I could